All right, then I guess we are live. Let's just give like a minute or two for like people to join in.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's great to have you though, Jacob. I mean, it's definitely nice after all these conversations to finally get the ball rolling on this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I love conversations like this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, let's see how it goes though.
I'm sure it'll be great.
Right. All right. Okay. Get a signal that we are live. So let's get started. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Janvi. I'm a content marketer here at Factors.ai. For those of you who don't know, Factors.ai is an analytics and attribution platform. So we leverage intent signals from multiple sources, be it LinkedIn, G2, your website, etc., and kind of unify it in a way so you can make a more coherent GTM strategy. And today I have with me Jacob Brain. Nice to meet you, virtually at least. And
Sure.
yeah, Jacob's been a long time of like he's worked with New North for a couple of years. He's used Factors.ai. So of course, like subtle pitch over there, but we'll be discussing some, actionable tips and insights on how exactly you can use, intent signals from different sources and how can marketers exactly kind of use that to kind of, improve their sales and marketing efforts moving forward. So yeah, Jacob, why don't you just like start us off and tell me a little bit about yourself, like your experience in ABM, how you got to New North, or I guess it's marketers in demand now. I'm sorry about that,
Yep.
but yeah, how's your experience been overall?
Yeah. All right, let's start back. New North is, I've actually been at New North for like 8 years or something like that. For quite a while, I kind of started off my career in the agency world, going to a couple different agencies, and then actually met at that time the owner of New North, the founder of New North. We kicked it off, started working here, ended up becoming a partner. And then after a couple years, so in what is it, March of 2023, we actually sold the agency to another agency in the space. And actually, since then, I've been working with those partners to grow and continue to acquire new agencies, grow organically as well. My role in the companies, New North being one of them, is as doctor. That'd be cool. Director of operations, and what that means for us, because operations is a really broad term,
Mhm.
is I pretty much run the whole delivery team. And so I
All right.
determine how we approach different marketing initiatives, what tech we use, how we can efficiently execute on them, how we measure the results from those campaigns for clients, and things like that. But yeah, that's at least a high level of me.
All right. So it kind of sounds like, you're a captain steering the ship, right? I mean, you're pretty much in charge of a lot of high level things. So seems like there's a lot on your plate. That's kind of impressive.
I would rather be too busy and not busy enough. So it definitely keeps me busy.
I mean, who wouldn't want to be not busy, right? I mean, I think if not a marketer, I'd definitely be in like a quaint village in Italy, like probably making pasta or something like that.
There you
But
go. One day.
one day, you never know. So yeah, kicking off. Well, the first question I did have for you is: I know you've been in the industry for like quite a while, as so you've said so yourself. You've managed like different clients across the world. You work with different companies. ABM is something that hasn't been around for like a very long time. I know it's been some term that's like kind of been popping up quite, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, right? So how do you think the role of ABM has kind of evolved over the years? Because I know a lot of people still today like confuse ABM with lead generation or demand generation. Like, there's no proper like term to it as such. So, how do you think? Like, what do you think is the true definition of ABM here?
Yeah, it evolved. So I think you're right. So I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago or so, ABM evolved from like just cold email. I think in many ways, just straight outreach, and then outreach was became a little bit more robust. And the differentiation between like an ABM strategy and something more traditional is that instead of focusing on hitting an individual, you focus on the account itself. And so you have a little bit of a different approach in thinking. And so what that means is not that you're using different channels necessarily, but your approach to those channels are different. So as an example of that would be like from a paid standpoint, you're not trying to show up in front of anybody who searches a term that's relevant. Instead, you're trying to show up to this company and this individual that's a part of this buying group. And so you're just thinking about it a little bit differently, but that thinking changes a lot of the strategy and approach that you take for it. One of the actually the biggest misconceptions that you just touched on there is that people will say, well, like we're running an ABM campaign. But when you start digging into it, they're sending like a couple cold emails to people. But real true ABM is a more robust like multi-channel approach where yeah sure you're sending emails to people, but you also have like targeted campaigns to those companies running across paid channels. They're seeing your ads on Forbes, they're whatever else, they're visiting your website because you're creating content specifically for them. And it depends on kind of which approach to ABM, because you can take a much wider approach, like a many to many sort of approaches to ABM. There's a term people will say, or some companies have like a dozen companies in their TAM. So it's super, super targeted, and you'll do a lot more one-to-one sort of approaches in that. So what ABM is can be interpreted different ways, but you definitely need multi-channels, and you definitely need to have an account-based focus, which sounds strange, but people will say they're doing ABM, and like part of their ABM strategy is a keyword-based Google Ads campaign. You're like, it's not
Yeah.
really it.
And I mean, people, I guess, like, oversimplify it by, just like kind of restricting to one channel and whatnot. And one point that you brought up is like really impressive, like interesting, because you touched upon like, targeting specific buying groups, right? But as you see, like in the past, like few years at least, like the sizes of buying groups have like rapidly increased. So decision making processes have definitely kind of slowed down. So let's say maybe if you're targeting like an enterprise company where, like the decision makers aren't necessarily just C-suite, it also goes to legal, it goes to procurement. Like
Mm-hmm.
how exactly do you target your ads to these specific personas versus, and I think for like SMBs, of course, like the decision makers or like the buying group in general will be relatively smaller. So again, like what is your approach like here for ABM, especially
Mm-hmm.
for like two very diverse sets of companies?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to, I'm going to say the word strategy, which is overused, but when I'm using the term strategy now, what I'm referring to is like, when you're doing ABM, you're targeting a buying group, and that buying group is not just the person that signs the check, because they have individuals around them that are different, like roles within that buying group. And so, yes, you have the person that's signing the check, right? That's the person you do need to convince that this is a good tool and a good fit. But you also have the user, like in a SaaS world, for example. And the messages to the user are going to be a lot different than the message to the CEO. CEO, you're going to have more ROI conversations, whereas the user, you're going to have maybe a little bit more like UX or feature-based conversations. And so when we're running campaigns, we always want to make sure that we're speaking to the right individual. And the other piece too is an ABM. Again, I'm going to keep going back to, and it's an account, and there's a buying group in that account. You don't want to just keep hitting the CEO with all of your messages, or the CTO, or whatever the product is, like your main individual persona target. Because even though we're not all around water coolers, and the water cooler conversation isn't happening in the physical world, that still happens, and those conversations happen. There's a dark social terms and all of that. But the point is, people are sending Slacks about tools. We have a channel internally called our Grow channel, where every day someone's like, hey, I found this new tool. I found this new tool. And oftentimes the people that need the tool, not the CEO of the company finding it. And so it's important when you're sending these messages out to kind of differentiate between these targets, and then to make sure that your message is a little bit different, because their buying decision individually is going to be different. You're still targeting people at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I totally agree that, like only bombarding the CEO, CTO, like only the C suite entirely is like very counterproductive, because let's be real, like everyone is marketing to them. Like they're going to be bombarded with like cold emails to ads, whatnot. But ultimately, like they wouldn't be the ones using a product. It all comes down to like marketing the right way to the end user. So, I mean, I know you mentioned that, on the Grow channel, people keep recommending like, tools that they found. I am one of those people. Sometimes I just find like a really cool maybe like content optimization tool or like a social media tool, and I'm like, guys, oh my god, we should use this. Like I'm in no position to make that decision, of course, like the decision makers are radically different, but yeah, I think the mode of discovery is like really different. So you should be able to kind of leverage multiple channels and kind of experiment that way accordingly. And yeah, I know dark social and all is just like, terminology, like very marketing jargon that's been floating a lot around
Mhm.
lately. But simply put, like, you just need to know how to reach your buyers the right way. Like, I think that's the core of like good ABM and good marketing as a whole.
But yeah, and I mean, even factors like individually, I did not find factors. That grow channel, somebody else in the company was like, wow, look at this cool tool. And I think like a month later, I was looking for something. They mentioned it again. I looked into it, and I'm the one that signed up for it in many cases. I think it was whatever
Mhm.
somebody at the company did, but it wasn't the person that brought it up. And so that's like another example of it like just floats up, and you see this in the data too, which we'll get to. Like you'll have
Mhm.
one or two people that you're targeting in your campaigns. You have their information. You're sending them emails. You're targeting them with LinkedIn ads or something like that. But then you have 9 people that have visited the website from the company. Like that's
Yeah.
the point of account-based marketing is that you would know you're going to influence many people, and your targeting should take that into account.
Right, right. So true. But before we dive into like the whole, intent signals and the data part of it, let's talk a little bit about like target account selection. So I've seen a lot of marketers kind of, get ambitious and decide to kind of, target enterprises, like basically Fortune 500 companies and whatnot. Like, I mean, it is ambition. I like credit where credit's due, but sometimes that may not exactly be the right fit, right? So like
Mhm.
for your tool or whatnot. So how I like since you work with like a variety of companies, you've seen like a variety, you've run a variety of these ABM. I'll not say campaigns. I'll say strategy. I don't know,
Yep.
but yeah,
Yeah.
you run ABM for multiple companies. So what exactly is your approach to like target account selection? Let's say for maybe a recently seed fund startup with like maybe less than 5 million ARR versus maybe like an enterprise, which is like I don't know, like an IPO led enterprise or
Mhm.
something like that with like revenue exceeds like 100 million or so. So what's your approach there?
Yeah. So before I even get there, you said something which I think is an important point. You said like an ABM campaign or something like that. I think it, I view ABM as an ongoing channel that you will use to reach your target market. Like no one would ever say I SEO'd this month and I'm done. Like you do it continuously. You keep feeding the system. You keep targeting these people. So that was just one note I wanted to make because I think that's another thing that
I know.
a lot of I have a lot of conversations around. But you knew it too. It's just an interesting thing. So
Yeah.
shifting back to your initial question around like how do you pick the right ICP? In my opinion, that comes well before we're even talking about EBM. So when we're working with clients, we're very quickly determining a couple of things like who is their TAM, so their total addressable
Mhm.
market, like who could this product work for, who does that product work for, who are the different people that we could target in that, but then even tighter into that of their actual ICP, like who are we building around? Just because this company or individual uses the product doesn't mean they're really our focus, right? And that can be
Mhm.
for reasons of features, for pain points not enough, whatever that might be. So you kind of go from TAM into the ICP, but those are, from my perspective, really they're like business conversations, and all marketing needs to be aligned with the business conversation. And so, in the very beginning of us working with clients, we're not just going to clients and saying, "Hey, who's your TAM? Who's your ICP?" Like that's part of it, but we actually like getting way deeper. So we look into their CRM, like who are your best clients in your CRM? What is it about them that make this good? Why did they come to reach out to you in the first place? We'll even do like when we can get this data, like if sales teams are like recording their meetings with fireflies or something like that, we want to do some analysis on that. So we'll pull a couple of those meetings and like, yeah, what are they really talking about? What are the main things that came to the meeting to understand or to get information on, and kind of diving into that. So there's a lot of different facets. But I would say just you need to, as a marketing team, align what you're doing to the business objectives of the company you're working for, and I would say talk to those people, talk to sales teams, pull the leadership in if you're able to. Otherwise, you create a campaign around the target market that doesn't have a strong enough pain or something around that. So there's a couple ideas at least on how we're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That definitely does make sense. Like it's definitely like an ongoing effort and whatnot. And yeah, I think the point that you brought up about like analyzing fireflies calls and everything. So I remember like back when I used to kind of work with the clients as a freelance content marketer. I mean, I used to create content that, mainly kind of highlighted the product really well. And as something that I do at Factors as well, like we talk to our sales team to understand like, okay, what part of the buying journey, like, are they reading this content as something super tofu, or is it something like sales enablement? And then you want to address objections right away. And I think the best way to understand like what your, like, ICP objections are, like beyond pricing, of course, like whatever the most common like objections are, like you kind of get that through these like sales recording calls in itself. And that definitely
Yep.
really helps you narrow down as to like the accounts that you want to target, right? And yeah, it's definitely a great approach in terms of narrowing down your selection, because most people are like, oh, everyone's my market. Yeah, no, I market to every
Yeah.
company in the world, even though, like, sadly that's not the truth, although that would bring like a wealth of revenue. It's definitely not how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody, there's probably a saying around this, but if you build, like, nobody is the average person. The average person doesn't
Yeah.
exist. And so if you target the average person, then it's actually going to be not related to anyone individually. It's much better to find those real individual group of people that actually use your product and actually benefit from it. So like when we're doing personas, we actually don't like make up, Susie, the saleswoman that uses our tech tool. We'll find a person that is either a current client or a prospective client that they're really trying to hit, because I can look at a real person and I can analyze a real person or
Yeah.
a bunch of individual people's. Susie the saleswoman is not a real person I can analyze. And so that's like just we try to make it more real than that. I don't know,
Yeah.
I guess it's fun, but
I know. Those ICP templates usually have that, like, oh, Susie, the salesperson, she loves coffee. She does like this. This is her
yeah,
thing. And I'm like, okay, fine, but what does she really want? Like, most of
yeah,
these templates, like generic templates out there, don't typically have that information, right? So, in fact, the main thing that you want to analyze is like, how do they make their buying decisions? Which kind of,
yeah.
brings me to my next question right here. What are your top criteria for, like, what are these intent signals that you kind of prioritize? Because I mean, I know there might be like, too much intent data, like not all intent data would be valuable, right? So
Hmm.
let's say maybe someone visiting your website, for instance, might just be like browsing through. Maybe someone downloading your ebook, that doesn't make them an MQL, right? Whereas
Yep.
let's say someone going through G2, your G2 profile, like they're going through your reviews, they're definitely stalking you. They want to consider your solution. Whereas let's say someone visiting the pricing page, now they would obviously be like higher intent, right?
Hmm.
So how did you kind of use factors to kind of, help your clients kind of identify these high intent buyers? And how did you use the website de-anonymization feature? Like, yeah, do tell us.
Yeah. So it's evolved over time. So back in the day, the intent data was a little harder to get, and then tools like Bombora became more popular, and so you could buy that information, but accuracy was a little bit questionable. I mean, it's getting a lot better now, and those are great
Mhm.
tools to use. But then we got into the stage where first-party data became way more accessible to get, and so that's actually I base most of our intent data, not all of it, but a lot of it is based on first party data. So you mentioned a couple elements of it. So factors is our key kind of trigger. And the way we do this, we can dive into this if you want. But I essentially have what we've done is we've built a central database. So we'll often call it like our TAM database. So everyone in our market, and in that database, we collect first party data from a variety of sources. A big source, probably the primary source and tool we're using for this, is factors. And so I can collect information from like who came from a certain paid campaign by using a factors trigger or a webhook to say if they are within these X number of industries, for example, and they visited the pricing page, I want that information in the database. If they have landed on our website with this UTM from this LinkedIn campaign we're running, I want that information in this database. And so I build a data repository that is outside of our CRM, because I don't want that to get messy. I don't want to pay $1 million for data I'm not using yet. So I build this database, and then I use a fairly traditional lead scoring methodology. And so when we're looking at this, and this is a conversation we have with the client before we even get started, we answer the questions that you are asking. And so we say, well, hey, if someone that is within the industries that we're targeting at or whatever land on a pricing page, how valuable is that in comparison to someone who clicked on a LinkedIn ad, or who even viewed a handful of LinkedIn ads, versus someone who has clicked on a couple emails that we've sent? So there's all these like actions and engagement metrics that now we're able to use a tool like Factors, or directly from the various email sending tools or whatever that we're using. We spit all of that into this database, and then it's not anything crazy revolutionary after that. It is just an algorithm that we build around these different activities and what engagements are worth what. And then that's where, so you have like the triggers from these outside sources landing into this database. That's where we trigger things to the sales team, where we trigger to the CRM. We kick off different campaigns because it allows us to see information like, I'm going on a monologue here, but we'll do something like saying, hey, if somebody clicks on 2 emails we've sent and they have visited our pricing page and they have whatever, and when I say they, I'm talking account level, by the way, then this account has reached a level, we'll call it, maybe they went from awareness to engaged. I want to actually
Mhm.
get different campaigns off to them. I'm going to stop
Yeah.
all of these higher awareness sort of brand plays, and I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to push them case studies. I'm going to send them
Mhm.
different resources we have. And so you can kind of, when you get that data into this database, you can have these really, really solid triggers for different types of activities for certain accounts. And that's been really, really helpful for us to roll out and to utilize. So um, yeah, that's part of it at least.
No, that's true. Like you definitely bring up a great point that not all accounts are created equal. Like some of them are definitely more engaged than the others. So as you mentioned, you kind of for case studies to let's say high intent accounts, someone's more like engaged, right? So something that we typically do is we as we move down the funnel, we run like different types of like LinkedIn ads, right? Like either if they're completely like at the stage where they've finished a call, they're evaluating other solutions, we kind of just push ads where we highlight specific features. Now we've recently launched this feature called LinkedIn ad pilots, so things like that, kind of just to kind of speeden up the decision making process, right? So there are a lot of channels where you can kind of leverage this intent signals, which kind of brings me to my next questions. Like, I mean, I know that like traditional channels for ABM are Google and LinkedIn, right? So how do
Mhm.
you exactly like decide which channel is far more effective or like is bringing leads? I mean, of course you have factors data, but besides that, like how
Mhm.
exactly like what's the process to kind of determine like, okay, we must double down on this channel, like this is the one that's going to get us leads, like qualified leads, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. So we often look at data in like three uh, like angles, I guess. So you have number one would be like um, like channel-based metrics. And these are what people often call them like vanity metrics. But I do want to look at those, like what is our click-through rate in this paid campaign? What is our what traffic are we driving from these emails that we're sending? Like they are vanity in the sense that they don't mean leads, but they're useful in tweaking campaigns for towards a certain end goal, right? So if you have a page, you're trying to get traffic to the website in 99% of cases. And so I can then tweak these elements of it to increase that. So there's a channel-based piece, and then there's the engagement level. And so this is where you need some sort of database of activity because you need to look at all the different channel data in one place. And this is not like you don't need a developer to do a lot of this stuff. Either. Like I'm often using Airtable for this, right? It's not
Oh,
some big query data lake sort of thing. Sometimes it is, but oftentimes it's just a simple tool you can use, a simple database. You spit all that information in there, and now I can start to see things like, all right, well, the clients that or the accounts that are converting are really heavily interacting with LinkedIn. It
mm-hmm.
seems to be like a watering hole for people looking for this type of information. Or I could
Yeah.
say, all right, well, the people that are converting, they have always have, I don't even know what's another example. They are always looking at our case study pages. Like maybe we
Mhm.
only included pricing as a lower funnel trigger, but that's one that we're learning to really looking at. So you have like these engagement level pieces where you can see what channels overall they're engaging with, and then you can allocate your funds accordingly to say, all right, I want to pour more into LinkedIn, but like our Facebook campaign is not doing that much. Maybe that's just the wrong target for now. I'm going to pool budget
Right.
over to our LinkedIn from there. And then the
Mhm.
last layer, so we have like channel based and engagement based would be just the analysis, which I kind of already talked about, the analysis of the actual like funnel. So how are those leads progressing through? Where they come from initially? What was their like last touch attribution? And you can look at that sort of data, and that's really a CRM conversation at that point.
Oh, that's true. One question, like sort of off topic though. So you do mention like last touch attribution. Now, do you actually believe that there is a right attribution model? I mean, everyone prefers like either first touch, last touch. Like, there's a huge debate about this, like in the marketing community. Of course, there's some people who are like, "Oh, attribution is dead. Like, you never really know." Big. I mean, of course, like you cannot track every single detail, but if you had to, like, maybe place your bets on one of these models, like which one would you like prefer?
Oh, I don't know. I guess my real answer to that is I care less about first touch versus last touch than I do about like a channel having an impact on a conversion happening. So like
Mhm.
let's say like what's a good example? Certain channels are inherently lower funnel, right? So an email, for example, if someone's super engaged and they've been on your website a bunch and they just happen to get an email from a salesperson saying, hey, you want to walk through a demo? Then you would be biased and thinking, wow, we need to just start sending a bunch more emails because they
Yeah.
convert at a higher rate. Well, yeah, but actually you're not taking into account the other channels that are higher up in the funnel that allowed for email to being uh, to perform in the way it is. And so suddenly you just start sending a bunch of emails and performance drops, and you're like, I was making database decisions here, but you're not having the full picture. So I like I every decision I make, I want it to be based on data, but I don't want to pigeonhole myself to your point, like in only last touch or I only care about first touch. Like I want to see which channels impacted, like influenced, I guess. Because even if there's a campaign that's like maybe a case study, you're pushing like a mid-funnel case study campaign on LinkedIn, for example, that might never get anyone to convert. It might be a secondary campaign that's only kicked off for people that are already aware. And so you might
Yeah.
look at that channel and be like, it's totally useless. But you're looking at the channel-based metric or the channel-based metrics, and you're saying everyone's loving this. They're like clicking on this thing like crazy. Well, that's why I want to look at those different layers of data. So I kind of struggled through that a bit. But my point is, I don't think I would pick one, and I don't even like the weighted necessarily. Like I know a lot of people will track it all and they'll say, well, when somebody closes, the first channel gives this percentage of credit, the last channel gives this percentage. That's still like a very biased perspective. I just want to see it all. And I want to look at the data through different lenses.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's definitely like a lot of different opinions on this. And I definitely do agree with you when you said that you don't want to kind of pigeonhole yourself into like just one type of attribution model, because there's many factors that kind of go into decision making, right? So one point that you brought up is like, clicks and engagement. So one common trend that I think I've seen across all platforms, especially like LinkedIn being one of them, because that's where most B2B executives are present, is people don't per se like kind of click on LinkedIn ads, right? They kind
Mm-hmm.
of just view it and then they visit the website and whatnot. So you don't really know the true impact of LinkedIn, right? So of course, like at Factors currently, so subtle self pitch here. So at Factors, we've kind of developed this like a platform called LinkedIn Ad Pilot, wherein
Yep.
you can actually understand like through through attribution, like which account, like whether your target account has exactly like viewed your LinkedIn ad and then they've visited your website and whatever they booked a demo, so all of that, like, so the true credit actually, like, you can get a truer sense of like your LinkedIn ROI. So let's say maybe we're running an ad wherein we kind of showcase our G2 badges or whatnot. Like that's of course like subjective to the content on the ad, so that'll be my next question. But yeah, so instead of clicking, I think I'd be someone who'd go to G2 and check out Factors reviews instead. So you'd assume like, oh, okay, they came through G2 and you'd attribute it to G2, but no, not really, it's still a
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn ad, kind of drove them there. So I think, yeah, we're kind at the current moment we are solving these problems, and I think there are a lot of other tools in the market as well who are kind of trying to focus on view through attribution as such. Because I don't think people, like, when they're scrolling through social media in general, like they don't really click on ads per se.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, unless of course it's like a video ad, you might want to kind of see what it's about. So yeah, I think view through attribution would be a more accurate way of it moving forward, instead of like
Yep.
entirely focusing on like first touch, last touch, whatever. Like see how often like your target account kind of views your ad and exactly how they engage with your brand moving forward. You can see like the effectiveness of each LinkedIn campaign as well, which I think would be like a very key intense signal, especially for ABM, because I mean LinkedIn's a major channel for ABM, so you'd want to
Mm-hmm.
know like if you're nailing it, right, or if marketers are even resonating with your ads and whatnot. So yeah, I just wanted to bring up that one
Yeah.
point.
Yes, I love that like approach that Factors are taking because the problem is you have data is becoming harder to track overall, right? We have like there's the obvious like GDPR sort of like privacy regulations that are hitting it, but there's also like more people are using private browsers, more people are working from different locations, which makes things hard. There's a million reasons this data is becoming harder to track, and so either there's a couple approaches. So a tool like Factors, you integrating with LinkedIn is a really powerful thing because you're connecting those two data sources together to draw a full picture of that journey. And that methodology or approach makes a ton of sense, especially in accounts-based marketing, because you're saying how have these companies done certain things, and so you're like your data model is built upon a company-based level so that you can see. Yeah, anyway, I'll stop there. But the point is that model makes a lot of sense. And where I'm excited to see factors continue to go, but where we're pushing ourselves to is that's actually the whole reason I built that database I'm telling you about.
Yeah.
Is because when a company or an account gets added to this database, I want to see, hey, I sent them 9 emails, and then or I said, let's just say this. Let's say they were in a LinkedIn campaign, and then magically they showed up on the website through organic results. Like that's not organic. They Googled us because they kept seeing us on LinkedIn, but
Exactly.
you need that data.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's the problem that we are currently looking to solve at the moment, right? So, yeah, I mean, going back on like the previous point that I made, like, of course, there's different types of like content formats that you kind of, go through LinkedIn. I know with Google, it's just like search, so I won't really delve too much into that. Like, Google's a very intent driven, so only if you like type a specific feature, like,
Mhm.
your ads kind of show up. But I think with LinkedIn, it's definitely a more interesting approach. They have these like document ads, text ads, etc. They
Mhm.
have video ads now. Oh my god, video is taking like taken LinkedIn by storm, especially vertical videos. The algorithms kind of keep changing, right? So what's your approach to like creating like ad copy, or deciding the ad format on LinkedIn, like for ABM? And because you don't really know, like each buyer has like maybe a different way they prefer, like want to be
Mhm.
marketed to. For instance, maybe a text ad might do the trick, whereas for some people, like they'd be more visual, so they'd prefer something like a video ad. So yeah, what's your approach to that?
Yeah, the scapegoat question or the easy answer is like, well, you just look at the data and make decisions, which you do. You do a bunch of things, you try a bunch of things, and you see what works and what doesn't. But I would say another element to that is you go back to the persona. So like, where are the I'll use the phrase like watering holes. Like, where are your person? Where are they hanging out? Do they go on certain publications to get information? Are they going to G2 to do a comparison of different SaaS platforms? Are they spending time on LinkedIn? Are they big TikTokers? Like that is you start with the ICP and then you fall into the channel and then you look at the data that's supporting that. But even that content is channel agnostic. So you would have your message can be across many different mediums. So that's how I approach it, like what medium or what channel to go at. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to content, so actually one of our agencies or like content creation, we make a content engine. And so we will often take the approach is we start with video and then we distribute that down. And the reason is that video is just a more robust uh, medium to create content from. And we want that video to be, I don't like the word like thought leadership, but like the client's perspective on the industry. And
Yeah.
so there are certain products. So like if we're working with a more consultant based approach, like
Yeah.
we lean really heavy into what is their perspective on the industry that they're serving, what is commonly going wrong. We want to get their face in front of people. That's the type of thing we're focusing on. Whereas with a more like a SaaS platform, we might focus on like the feature set more. And there's this balance. There's the saying, sell the sizzle, not the steak. I actually don't really agree with that. Like in some cases, sure, there's an element to it, but people are often doing way more research, and they're like buyers' behavior has changed a lot, and they do need to check boxes. If they're coming to your website and they're like, "Hey, this thing has a lot of sizzle, it's hot, it tastes really good. What in the world is
Yeah.
this thing?" Companies lean sometimes way too heavy into things like that, and it
Yeah.
doesn't answer just simple questions about like, "What is your tool? What does it do for me?" And can you prove to me with like through social validation and things like that that you're actually doing this,
Yeah.
the impact you promise. So I went in a couple different directions there, but just some ideas and things I think about when we go to create content.
No, I do agree with that. I actually do. Like, I think the point that you made about, being simple with your messaging moving forward, because I've seen like so many of these like SaaS landing pages, for instance, where like they have like very jargon-esque copy with like these
Mm-hmm.
generic terms like, oh, unlock your potential and supercharge and whatnot. And it's
Yeah,
like,
what does
okay,
that
tell
even
me
mean?
exactly like what does the tool really do? They don't really get to the point, right? Because I
Yep.
mean, even if let's say you are running like a very effective LinkedIn ad campaign, okay, your target accounts are interested in your solution, but then if they go to your website, like they visit your homepage, they visit your product page, and then they're like just confused as hell about like, okay, what does it exactly do? They're
Yep.
gonna click away for sure. So effectively, like you really need to look at all aspects instead of just like the channel that you run or like the type of content that you create. Because yeah, I do agree that like it's all content agnostic. It's about like what sorry, channel agnostic. It does come down to like what resonates with your buyers at the end of the day. But I
Yeah.
mean, just out of curiosity, I'd like want to know, do you have like a favorite, kind of format of ads, for instance, like
Mm.
something that you've seen work repeatedly?
Yeah, we've seen so like the LinkedIn forms, we found a lot of success in those. We have several clients that are just crushing it with those. So those work really well. We have had email is still one of the strongest channels, even though data
Mm-hmm.
is getting harder to track through that. And we've like pulled actually a lot of tracking into this methodology that you and I have been talking about instead of like how many people opened and clicked. We're kind of saying like I
Yeah.
don't really even care about that. I just want to look at kind of who's converting and where they end these email campaigns and how did that
Mm-hmm.
impact this flow. So there's a different approach to that. But email is still one of the strongest, LinkedIn forms. And I mean, honestly, LinkedIn overall. We'll try a bunch of different channels, but that is one of all of our clients are in B2B. Most are in B2B tech. And people spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So there's just work. That channel works really well overall.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm surprised the lead gen channels, like lead gen forms, surprisingly do work, because I know there's a lot of friction that goes into like filling the form. You don't really know what is like
Mm-hmm.
the right number of form fields. Like I think the drop off rate would be really high. At least like that's my perspective to it. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really surprised to see that I'm surprised that it actually works.
Yeah, it depends on the client too. Like that's why I kind of have a hard time answering it. It's like some things work super, super well for clients and some don't. And so like a really high consideration purchase, a LinkedIn form might not work quite as well because you need a
Yeah.
deeper level of engagement. But if it's like a tech consultant selling $100 course or something, well, that you can do through a LinkedIn ad. You can kind of get at least that buyer's journey started through whatever
Yeah.
form they're filling out to get more information or whatever that might be. So it really just is so dependent on the persona.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess there's like a plethora of experiments you can try
Mhm.
out. Plus, like LinkedIn is definitely rolling out like some exciting features where, okay, you can kind of, there are new metrics to measure,
Mhm.
I guess. I think they recently rolled out like, how many seconds exactly you can track, like, when a prospect kind of views your video or whatnot. But we don't even know if that like metric is effective or not, which
Yeah.
again, like brings me to, the big question like ROI. So, how do you
Mhm.
exactly like track ROI like of your ABM efforts? So, I know like saying, oh, we track the revenue or we track the pipeline. Like, no, that's a very that's a very like broad level answer. But are there like any specific metrics that you track, or is there something like you monitor very closely to understand like, okay, fine, like our ABM efforts are kind of resonating with our target accounts. So like what are the main metrics that you track?
Yeah, so this is a really big conversation at the beginning of any client engagement that we have. Every client's going to say something along the side. It's like, hey, if I put $1 in and I get $2 out, my budget is infinite. And you're like, all right, that sounds good. How do you track that? What does that look like? Where is this data stored? How deep in the funnel are you able to see? And then we'll find out in some cases, like in very large companies, for example, the marketing team may have no idea and no data around what happens after someone becomes a free trial user, for example. It's like, all right,
Yeah,
well, ROI is kind of out of the conversation, but how many free trials do you need to sign up for? Like, what is leadership talking about there? Do we have an average on like X number of free trials return into this sort of paid users? How can we like run those numbers to figure out what this campaign needs to achieve? So there is the revenue side. And that's like, in my opinion, the closer that you can get as a marketing team to proving like ROI and revenue impact at the company, the better conversations you're going to have with leadership, the more alignment you're going to have with sales teams.
mhm,
And so I just really like they're hard conversations to push into because when a
of course.
CEO comes to you and they're like, "Hey, I need more leads." You're just going to
Yeah.
be like, all right, I'll do more leads. Okay. Like, I'm sorry, I'll do more, I'll do better. But like to push in those and be like, all right, well, what do you mean by more? Obviously, we want more. That's what everyone's pushing towards. Like, where is that data held? Can I get this information from the sales team? Because they're not filling out the CRM. So I can't see what the conversion rates are looking at. And I don't know where my leads are going to then adjust down funnel. So, like, pushing into that conversation is the most valuable thing that a marketing team can do. That being said, all of that. There are the basic things that we want to look at, like like CAC and things like that.
Of
But then for
course.
some companies, it's totally different because we can't get that data, and so we'll just say, like we're working with a large company right now, where all they care about is free trials. From a
Mm-hmm.
marketing, like marketing's job is to get free trials. If marketing gets free trials, they win, which means we win. And so
Yeah.
in that standpoint, it's not customer acquisition costs. It's like, cost for free trial user, net number of
Mhm.
trial users. Because then at that point, it shifts into like their, I forget what it's called. It's like their their customer team essentially is in charge of turning free trials into paid trials. And so the
Yeah.
number really, or the whatever you're looking at, changes per client. But I want to push as close to revenue as I can possibly get. Because at the end of the day, if you're making revenue for your company, you're going to be in a good spot, and everything else is details.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, I guess. Like you need to have that conversation with your customers or your clients, like right off the bat to kind of understand like what their goals are and what you're planning to track. Because if you give like a broad answer like revenue, that's like, okay, fine. Like everyone does that, like what makes you different. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think you brought up a very excellent point about like, sales and marketing alignment here as well. Is like, okay, you have to generate leads, but what kind of leads? Like what
Mm-hmm.
exactly defines a qualified lead? What's an MQL? What's an SQL? And
Yep.
I see like companies really kind of, have confusion over this. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like, oh, you download an ebook, you're an MQL. Like, no, that's not the case. So when you
Yep.
mentioned that, okay, only if you're bringing a free trial, like that counts, as
Yep.
something genuinely valuable as someone to, let's say, just visiting your website and whatnot. So that's again, like, I guess where like we also kind of use factors to kind of understand, like, I mean, in our marketing team, we just like, measure MQLs to like whoever signs up for the product, like,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're coming through a LinkedIn ad, whether they're coming through Google ad, or whether they're, just kind of scrolling through our content or whatnot, like even content marketing attribution, which once upon a time, like I know a lot of people kind of track vanity metrics, so to speak, but I think with factors you can actually like attribute revenue to like the content that you
Yeah.
create. So I guess in that way, yeah, you should really understand like, how your buyer is moving through the funnel and, measure ROI accordingly instead of just like, throwing vague terms. And same goes for like, sales and CS and whatnot. Exactly. I think like if they resort to signal based selling, so to speak, if
Mm-hmm.
they actually like pay attention to like the intent signals that they're getting from accounts, they can kind of alter their sales strategy as well. Like you can maybe send specific like competitor decks, so to speak, if they're checking
Mm-hmm.
out, you against, let's say, product X on G2. So you can do something like that, and it's definitely more easier to like kind of convert your deals as well. So but again,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a lot of tools, right? So
It is. Well, so you mentioned a couple of things. So you mentioned definitions. So that is, again, we actually have a document when we start working with clients where we say, here's our assumption or our default for what a lead is, what an MQL, what an SQL, what all these things are. I want to say, what phrases are we using? What terms are we using? Are we using like a standard format like that? Or some people will make up their own acronyms. I don't care. That's totally fine. I want to know what language you're using for the various funnel stages. I want to know your definition of that, and I want to know who's responsible or what's responsible for triggering that. Is it automated? Are we leaning on the sales team to do that? Because when we are feeding this funnel, I want to be able to point to something and be like, that is the data. This is what should have happened. This is meets this definition, and this is what who needs to move it or whatever that might be. So that's one thing I think you're totally right. Like people will talk past each other on the marketing and sales team. Marketing's like, I just gave you 100 leads. Why aren't you closing them? And the sales team's like, your leads suck. And so we're just talking about different things in many cases. So there's definitions of piece. But actually shifting back to factors, I'll sell factors for you right now. Intent is a huge piece of this, but another massive benefit of factors is that we can collect data without needing um, like access to every system. And so an example of this is another client that we're working with right now. The marketing team just has no information and no tracking from after the how to say this. Their tracking infrastructure is essentially overly complicated. They're trying to build it themselves essentially instead of just using pre-built ones. So we started going to that world and we're like, fine, whatever, you guys do that thing. We're actually going to collect our own data. And then that's where factors comes in. And so essentially what they do is they send at the end of the funnel customers, and we get a customer list at the end of each week. And then we are using factors to build a database to then match that customer to see their journey. So instead of like seeing that person progress kind of every step through, we're saying, I have no vision there. I don't have access. You don't have access. No one has access. So I don't care about it. But you do have access to the end of the funnel. So I want you to send me this report on a weekly basis. And then we can just attach that to the data from factors to then do attribution ourselves. And so tools like that are just beautiful because I can see on an account level what accounts and companies have been doing and then connect that to this list we get from final customers so that when we see like, hey, well, our CRM is saying that this person came from direct, that we can then say, I hear you, but we spun them up in an email campaign. They've clicked on 9 LinkedIn ads across the company, and they randomly landed on your website's conversion page through direct. I see a different story here. And so we can have a really good not that aggressive, but a really healthy conversation about like the data that we're able to collect. And we couldn't do that without a tool like Factors. And I particularly like Factors for a handful of reasons, but that
Hmm.
was just a note I wanted to make as well.
Now, I know it was great that you solved factors for us. That was awesome. And definitely we'll use this as a clip if across our company page and whatnot. So thank you for that.
Perfect.
But of course, like Add Factors is like just one tool in the entire
Hmm.
Martech stack. Right? I mean, of course, you have your CRMs, you have, like as you mentioned, the note taker also, which
Hmm.
may seem insignificant at first, but still like plays a very critical role in understanding like, okay, you're having a conversation, how's that going to go, etc. So how do you exactly use factors throughout this tech stack? I mean, of course, you
Hmm.
might be having HubSpot, you're using, I'm guessing, like AI email sales tools like maybe
Hmm.
Lavender, Polo, things like that. So yeah, exactly. Like what is your tech stack look like, and how do you think, like across all of this, like what's the best way to kind of use factors?
Yeah. So there's a couple tools. There's the like channel-based tools that we use. So there's like obviously LinkedIn and social platforms. We like AdRoll or Nextroll. There's a brand confusion in my mind there, but from a DSP standpoint, we use them a lot. I really like them. We are using from email systems. I like SmartLead a lot. We've used Apollo, Lavender. I've used a bunch of them. Right now, I'm really leaning into SmartLead, which
Mhm.
the reason that a big factor for selecting tools like this, and it's just somewhat the technical nature of ABM, is like SmartLead. I'll use that and Factors, but SmartLead has amazing webhooks. And so
Mhm.
their API is really solid, but their webhooks are really good. So I can connect it to all these different things. I would pick really good webhooks, a good AI, and a good API and a good support team over the best UI in the world. Give me a bad UI, but really good infrastructure. I will pick that tool. So that's the reason I like that tool. I will use Airtable as a data repository. A lot of the
Mhm.
times we will use more complex systems like just data lakes and stuff like that in some circumstances, but Airtable is my go-to because it's just simple and I can have a lot of people kind of see what's happening. Factors is a key piece in that account-based data, so we'll connect that to obviously our website to see where people come from, but we'll set up segments for various campaigns. And so we try to be really tight with our UTM parameters across all these tools because I want to know
Mhm.
a couple things. I want to know original source. So where did they come from a channel standpoint? I also want to know like system source. So where am I getting this data from? And so where did I
Mhm.
collect that from? And then I want to know obviously just like information about a company generally, like industry and some activity on the website and stuff like that. So Factors is like my um, uh, really content aggregator from a website standpoint on what channels was traffic coming from and how did that impact conversion rates. And then I append that with individual activity based ones. So I'll use like SmartLead I mentioned to send webhooks into this database because I can't see in Factors who was sent an email, but I can see where traffic came from when they clicked on an email link or something like that. So that's just a couple of the tools, at least in our Hey Reach is another one. So we'll use that for LinkedIn, like DMs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's most of them. We use a bunch of different tools.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess that's like all marketing companies at this point, or marketing focused companies, so to speak.
Hmm.
I know because there are brands who are like more sales led or product led, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned like smart leads. So actually, at Factors, we've kind of built these like we've built workflows using Clay in itself, wherein
Yep.
you can use like multiple tools, as you mentioned. We recently partnered with HeyReach as well. We've
Mm.
partnered with Smart Lead, so you can use all of this like data. You can, like, let's say maybe you want to write like a personalized sales email. So of course you use Smart Lead, but you can leverage, you can integrate those two like through a workflow, like, and you can kind of personalize the email with the intent data that you've kind of acquired using
Yeah.
Factor. So that, like, these are some of the workflows that we offer our clients. We're kind of working on like a Clay playbook, so to speak. So, and we can help like marketers and salespersons, like, okay, how exactly, like, you can connect the entire like tech stack, because a lot of companies have like a very disparate systems across, like, whether it's
Hmm.
for sales, like, or they're using a bunch of different things, or like marketing's using a bunch of different things, and it's just kind of hard to like actually kind of integrate it, make it like come together, make it more cohesive, and that kind of like
Hmm.
slows down your GTM efforts as well, because
Yep.
like data is like in so many silos at that point. It's just like kind of hard to keep track. So definitely makes more sense to have a more cohesive workflow. Like we
Hmm.
usually like, we have workflow automations like that. Like for instance, like LinkedIn, Apollo, Factors, and Smartly. So if they've, let's say, maybe viewed a LinkedIn ad and we want to reach out, and we obviously have their contact information and whatnot because we've integrated with Apollo. So yeah, we kind of just like send a personalized sales email sequence. So it's not
Yep.
just like one and done kind of email. Like you're actually sending a proper nurture sequence. You're kind of ensuring that okay, you stay engaged with them throughout the buyer journey instead of maybe, let's say, sending like a standalone cold email and just them forgetting about you. Because I
Yep.
guess like executives and whatnot, they have their inboxes full as it is. If you want to stand out, you got to make sure like you do it right, you do it like a personalized way. And yeah, I guess all of these tools, like when integrated together, like definitely makes things like much easier.
Yeah, so we've talked through like the channel-based activity, and then I've mentioned a couple times like the more complex database infrastructure, the factors builds there is a big piece of, but in the middle is exactly what you're talking about. So like if we're talking about the spectrum of like integration, there's no integration, there's a super deep big database of integration that you build. In the middle are these awesome workflows that you can build. So just to give you a couple examples of these, so like we'll use like what's a good example? We'll use okay, so you have opportunities in your CRM that you lost, and it will come back to the website at one point. Well,
Mhm.
Factors integrates with HubSpot. So what I can do is I can set up a segment to say anytime somebody or a company on this lost list, people that are tagged this way, come back to the website, then I want you to spit that information from that company level, because Factors is company level in many cases, although you can get some account level. I want to grab that. I want to then spit that into using a webhook into a Clay database. And then I want
Mhm.
to write this personalized content. You can get AI integrated in various fields there. And then I want
Yeah.
to spit that into a smart lead campaign or a Lavender or whatever, Apollo, whatever tool you use there. And now you
Mhm.
have automated lost opportunity follow up from the salesperson that was talking with them previously. That's a really powerful automation. Or we'll have
Exactly.
some where like if they do certain activity on the website, we'll make a segment in Factors and they just get added to a certain campaign. So it's like a way more robust version of like a simple remarketing campaign is like, did company show up on our site, send them this campaign. Well, we can create various segments of different types of people, different industries, different activities they had on the website, and send them into really personalized campaigns. And those
Mhm.
are like Factors makes it very easy to set the. I'm just going to keep selling you guys. Factors makes it very easy for someone who's not like a developer to set up a webhook without even knowing what a webhook is in many cases and connect that to these different tools in like a really accessible way that is going to get 10x the results of just I have a remarketing campaign, I send a paid campaign, and I do this stuff, but none of it's integrated together. So it's like a very, again, it's a central repository of information and triggers that you can have. So yeah, we like skipped over that middle ground and integration that is a lot of companies can really get value from.
Yeah, no, I mean, you mentioned a great point about like the closed lost account thing,
Mm-hmm.
because definitely, like, of course, as much as you want to, keep getting new leads and whatnot, you also want to value, like, the closed lost accounts. Like, maybe they didn't have the budget at the time, or maybe they were just like, maybe not the right fit at the moment, but maybe suddenly it's like, oh, they acquired funding, they're looking to expand the tech stack. So you never really know, like, what would exactly, trigger, like,
Mm-hmm.
buying decisions. So when they do decide to like consider your solution, you have to be very prepared for it. And I really like the point that you made about like speaking to the same sales executive like they previously spoke to, because you want to offer like a unified customer
Yep.
experience throughout. Like you don't want to end up speaking to too many people in a team, having them getting confused and considering other solutions. So yeah, I think like we've recently like conducted a workflows launch. Like we had a whole we had a similar LinkedIn live like this one, wherein our product manager and our product marketing manager, they kind of just sat down and had a clear explanation of like, okay, how do you use in these workflow automations to automate G2? Because when you hear workflows, you typically think, it's just like integrating one tool to the other, but it's definitely like more complex, as you said. And it
Mm-hmm.
brings the returns, like you don't really realize it unless you actually kind of try it out.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And just playing around with those can bring so much value. Like, if you can learn how to use Factors, Make, and Clay, you can do anything. Everything
That's
else just comes from there. Like if you just learn those three tools and how they connect together, you're golden from a marketing standpoint. At least for
we
my starting point.
I mean, we actually are pretty golden if you do look at it that way. Like, yeah, we have like a few integrations set up as well, and it's
Yep.
definitely been a boon for us, like sales and
Yeah.
marketing otherwise.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, this was a really insightful conversation. I mean, the number of times that you sold factors on the live was awesome. So that's like great content for me. But otherwise, it was really amazing talking to you as well, Jacob, to kind of really understand like how you kind of gain value out of factors. How do you like personally implement ABM? I'll not say
Mhm.
the word campaigns anymore, just ABM. Yeah, just like how you implement ABM for like different companies. So yeah, as someone who is primarily like very new to marketing, like in itself, like I just have like 1 year of experience. I'm like an industry baby. So this is definitely really helpful for me to kind of understand like, how do you exactly execute ABM across different channels, like the content. And yeah, overall it's been like a very illuminating conversation, and it was lovely having you here.
Oh, of course, it's great to be here. I love chatting like this.
Yeah, all right. Maybe we'll have more conversations like this sometime soon. But yeah, I guess like I hope I get to speak to you guys soon.
Back at you. It was great chatting. I appreciate it.
All right. And to everyone watching, I mean, I guess stay tuned for many more LinkedIn lives coming our way. Of course, if you want to check out our product, you can kind of reach out to me or like any of our sales team. You can reach out to our founders, and we'll be happy to kind of give you a walkthrough to understand like how you can use factors, how you can well use intent signals for ABM. So yeah, thank you all so much, everyone. Thank you all for joining in.
Thank you.